Nathan Reed's eyes fluttered open to the soft golden hue of the morning sun, streaming through the tall windows of his stately home. For a moment, he thought he was still dreaming, that perhaps the cold emptiness that had settled in his chest over the past 4 years was only a nightmare. But the quiet of the house, the way the light fell on the polished floors, and the faint echo of children's laughter long past confirmed the truth. He was alone again. He swung his legs over the edge of the bed and felt the chill of the wooden floor against his bare feet. The bed beside him was empty. It had been empty for far too long. His wife, Amelia, the woman who had once been the heartbeat of his life, had been taken by illness, a sudden, relentless disease that left him holding memories and not the warmth of her hand. He had promised her once, on that last night filled with whispered goodbyes and tears, that he would be both father and mother to their children, that he would not let grief blind him from what mattered most. But Nathan had failed for years. Work had become his refuge. He told himself it was for the children, that by building a legacy, providing security, and ensuring their comfort, he was keeping Amelia's memory alive. But the truth was simpler and far crueler. He had been running from the void in his own heart. Chloe and Lucas, their precious children, had grown under the care of nurses, tutors, and Sophia, the ever-faithful caregiver who had quietly filled the role of mother when he had refused to step into it. Nathan's absence was a quiet theft, invisible in its cruelty, but devastating in its consequences. That morning, as he dressed in his crisp gray suit and checked his reflection in the mirror, Nathan didn't recognize the man staring back at him. He saw success, yes, but he also saw emptiness. There was polish and perfection on the surface, but no spark in his eyes. It had been years since he had smiled without forcing it. Years since the children had run to greet him at the door, arms wide and full of trust. He had become a ghost in his own home, a spectator of life rather than a participant. He wandered into the kitchen, the silence pressing on him like a weight. The sleek countertops and stainless steel appliances reflected the sunlight, but there was no warmth here, no laughter, no chaos, no smell of pancakes or freshly baked bread. He poured himself coffee, dark and bitter, just the way Amelia used to make it when she wanted him awake in time for the children's breakfast. He lingered by the refrigerator, staring at the magnets that held up the children's drawings. One caught his eye, a crude sketch of a family, arms entwined, smiling faces, with a small figure labeled Mommy standing beside the children. He felt a pang in his chest so sharp it took his breath away. He wanted to fix things. He wanted to step back into the life he had abandoned, but guilt and fear kept him rooted in place. How could he reclaim a role he had neglected for so long? How could he convince Chloe and Lucas, who barely remembered him as more than a man who came and went, that he belonged in their lives? As he finally picked up his briefcase to leave for work, a sound stopped him. Laughter. A child's laughter, rich and warm, drifting down the hallway from upstairs. Nathan froze. His heart skipped. He hadn't heard that sound directed at him in years. Without thinking, he walked toward the source, hand trembling slightly as he touched the railing of the staircase. At the top, he peeked around the corner and saw Chloe, now 10, swinging a toy airplane above her head, her hair tangled in the morning sun, and Lucas, 7, rolling across the floor, giggling uncontrollably. And beside them, a woman he didn't know her name, yet kneeling on the floor, her hands guiding them, her eyes bright and kind, her laughter blending with theirs. For a moment, Nathan felt his entire world shift. He didn't understand what he was seeing. He had never allowed himself to imagine anyone could replace Amelia. And yet here was someone who was doing the unthinkable, giving his children love, attention, and guidance in a way he hadn't been able to. A woman stepping into the role he had abandoned, but doing so with such grace that it didn't feel like replacement. It felt like life, like hope returning to a house that had been hollow for far too long. He wanted to speak, to call out to them, to reclaim his place, but his voice caught in his throat. He stood frozen, a mix of awe and fear coursing through him. How could someone come in and show him what he had lost and what he could still have? Without even trying, he realized, in that suspended moment, that today would be the day his life changed, not because of business deals or success, but because of the heart he had almost forgotten to nurture. Nathan slowly retreated, returning to the solitude of the kitchen. But now the silence was different. It wasn't suffocating, it was full of possibility. For the first time in years, he felt a spark, a whisper of hope that perhaps he could be more than the man who left love and family behind, that perhaps, with courage, patience, and humility, he could reclaim his place in his children's lives and honor Amelia's memory not just in thought, but in action. As he sipped the cooling coffee, Nathan made a decision. He would not leave the house again today without truly seeing his children. He would not let fear keep him from connection, and he would pay attention, watch, and learn, even if it meant stepping aside for someone who had taken the first courageous steps he had avoided for so long. Today, he would begin the journey of being the father and the parent his children deserved. Little did Nathan know, the woman he had watched, guiding, laughing, and loving, would soon teach him lessons about resilience, compassion, and the transformative power of love that no amount of wealth could buy. And in doing so, she would awaken something in Nathan's heart that he had thought lost forever, the courage to love, fully and unreservedly, again. Nathan couldn't stop thinking about the morning he had just witnessed. The laughter of his children, Chloe and Lucas, replayed in his mind like a song he had forgotten the words to. He had returned to his office, surrounded by blueprints, contracts, and the sterile hum of corporate life, but the world of numbers and deadlines felt suddenly hollow. His heart tugged him back to the house, to the warmth and life that had been growing quietly under the care of someone else. By midday, Nathan's thoughts became unbearable. He couldn't focus on the designs spread across his desk, couldn't memorize the project schedules, couldn't discuss budgets without drifting into daydreams of his children's faces. The sound of the city outside the office window, the honking cars, the chatter of passersby, the rush of business suddenly seemed distant, irrelevant. What mattered, he realized, was not the steel beams he drew, the meetings he dominated, or the deals he closed. It was his children. He left work early, feeling the weight of years pressing down on him, guilt mixed with hope. Driving home, he rehearsed what he would say, how he could explain his absence, how he could begin to make up for the years he had lost. But the more he planned, the more he realized that words alone would not suffice. Love, presence, and patience would be required in ways he had forgotten. When he arrived home, the house felt alive in a way it hadn't in years. The faint scent of vanilla and cinnamon lingered in the air, and the distant sound of giggles floated down the hallway. Nathan paused at the foot of the staircase, heart hammering. There she was again, the woman who had stepped into their lives with courage and grace. She was kneeling beside Lucas, guiding him through a puzzle, her eyes calm and encouraging, her hands gentle. Chloe was nearby, practicing a drawing lesson, her small hands clumsy but determined under the patient instruction of this woman. Nathan felt a strange combination of awe and fear. He wanted to rush forward, embrace them, apologize, and reclaim his place, but he hesitated, unsure if he had the right to intrude into the bond they were forming. It was as if he was witnessing a delicate dance, one he feared to disrupt with his clumsy presence. The woman looked up and caught his gaze. Nathan froze. There was no alarm in her eyes, no judgment, only a quiet strength and warmth that seemed to see into the deepest parts of his soul. She smiled, softly, almost imperceptibly, as if acknowledging his struggle without words. Nathan realized in that instant that she was not an intruder, not a replacement, but a bridge that could guide him back to the family he had neglected. He found himself standing at the edge of the room, hesitant, uncertain, but drawn by the undeniable pull of connection. Slowly, almost cautiously, he stepped forward. Lucas looked up, eyes wide with surprise, and Chloe froze, pencil in hand. Nathan's heart ached at the sight of them, so small, so full of life, and yet so distant from him. Dad, Lucas whispered, his voice trembling with the mixture of recognition and confusion. Nathan knelt down, lowering himself to their level, trying to erase the years of absence with a single gesture. "Hey, buddy," he said, his voice cracking slightly. I missed you today." Chloe hesitated, then slowly crossed the room, her small hand slipping into his. Nathan felt a warmth spread through his chest that he hadn't felt in years, It was fragile, new, but it was real. He looked at the woman who had been guiding them, their laughter now mingling with his own, and nodded silently in gratitude. The days that followed were unlike anything Nathan had expected. He began to take part in the children's routines, awkwardly at first, learning the rhythm of their lives, rediscovering the simple joys of bedtime stories, breakfast conversations, and shared laughter. He realized that love was not something that could be manufactured or replaced. It had to be lived, moment by moment, with presence and intention. The woman, whose name he finally learned was Isabella, continued to guide him, not with admonishment, but with gentle encouragement. She showed him how to balance firmness with warmth, how to engage with Chloe's curiosity without stifling it, how to support Lucas's energy without becoming overwhelmed. Nathan felt a transformation within himself, a quiet awakening that reminded him of the man he had once hoped to be, the father Amelia had believed he could be. One evening, as Nathan watched the children sleep, he reflected on the journey that had brought them here. He understood, finally, that grief was not a chain to hold him back but a weight to be carried and shared, a reminder of love lost and love still possible. And he realized that in allowing Isabella to step into their lives, he had not diminished his role but expanded it, creating a family stronger than he had imagined. The following weeks brought challenges, of course. Old habits died hard. Nathan's instinct was still to retreat into work when things felt overwhelming, but Isabella's presence, steady and unwavering, reminded him that courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. Slowly, he began to see himself not as a man failing in his responsibilities, but as a father capable of learning, growing, and loving in ways he had never known. By the time the first month passed, Nathan felt a change he could not ignore. Chloe and Lucas were beginning to trust him again, sharing their thoughts, their joys, and even their fears. They laughed more freely, reached out more often, and sought his guidance in small but meaningful ways. And in those moments, Nathan realized that life had given him a second chance, a chance to be the father, the parent, and the man his children needed him to be. As he sat on the porch one evening, Isabella beside him, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of gold and crimson, Nathan felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. The path ahead would not be easy. There would be mistakes. There would be missteps, but he understood now that love, patience, and presence were the keys to rebuilding a family. And he knew that together, with courage, heart, and hope, they could create a life richer, fuller, and more beautiful than he had ever imagined. Nathan awoke that morning with a restless energy he hadn't felt in years. The house, usually so silent in the early hours, now seemed alive with the promise of possibility. Sunlight spilled into the kitchen as he poured himself a cup of coffee, the aroma sharp but comforting. His mind, however, was not on the caffeine. It was on Chloe and Lucas, on the laughter he had glimpsed yesterday, on the quiet, unspoken bond he was slowly beginning to rebuild. And of course, it was on Isabella, the woman who had somehow walked into their lives and shown him what courage and love truly looked like. The sound of small footsteps and the soft scrape of a chair pulled Nathan's attention toward the doorway. Chloe entered, her hair still tousled from sleep, eyes wide with curiosity and excitement. "Good morning, Daddy," she exclaimed, her voice carrying an innocence that both warmed and broke his heart. Nathan felt a pang of emotion. He had missed so many mornings, so many tiny moments that could never be reclaimed. He bent down, smiling, trying to match her energy. "Good morning, sweetheart," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "Did you sleep well?" Chloe nodded vigorously and grabbed his hand. "Lucas is downstairs. We're going to build the biggest fort ever," she said, practically dragging him toward the living room. Nathan's heart surged as he followed, realizing that these were the moments he had been denying himself for years, the small, seemingly ordinary moments that were, in truth, extraordinary. Downstairs, Lucas was already deep in construction, cushions, blankets, and chairs forming the beginnings of what he proudly called a castle. Isabella knelt nearby, helping him stack the cushions, her eyes bright with encouragement. Nathan stopped at the doorway, watching, feeling a strange combination of awe and humility. He had never imagined that a fort could carry so much meaning. that building it alongside his children could feel like rebuilding his soul. Isabella noticed him standing there, and their eyes met. There was no tension, no fear, only a gentle acknowledgement of the shared mission, the children's happiness. She gestured subtly, inviting him to join without needing words. Nathan took a deep breath and stepped forward, feeling the awkwardness of his absence, but also the thrill of participation. The next hours passed in a blur of laughter, playful arguments, and triumphant victories as the fort grew taller and more elaborate. Nathan's hands ached from lifting cushions and tucking blankets, his back stiff from bending and stretching, but none of it mattered. For the first time in years, he felt a presence in his life that had nothing to do with work or accomplishments. He was simply Nathan, father, protector, and partner in imagination, and it felt good. As they sat inside the completed fort, Chloe and Lucas snuggled close, sharing snacks and whispering secrets. Nathan listened, realizing that this closeness, this intimacy, was something he had lost and could now reclaim. He felt a profound gratitude for Isabella, not just for what she had done for the children, but for what she was doing for him. She was guiding him back to life, back to love, back to the family he had almost let slip through his fingers. Later that afternoon, after lunch, Nathan found a quiet moment to speak with Isabella. Alone, they sat in the garden, the breeze carrying the scent of blooming flowers and freshly cut grass. Nathan's hands shook slightly as he spoke, trying to express emotions he hadn't allowed himself to feel openly in years. I don't know how to thank you," he said. "You've done so much for my children. For me, I don't know how I can ever repay this." Isabella smiled softly, her eyes steady and kind. "You don't need to repay anything, Nathan," she said. "You're learning. You're stepping into the role you promised to fill. That's what matters. Love isn't measured in grand gestures, it's in presence, in patience, in showing up every day. You're here now, and that's enough." Her words resonated deeply with Nathan. He realized that he had been waiting for a perfect moment to reclaim his role as a father, for the right timing, for permission. But there was no perfect moment. There was only now, and now was enough if he chose it. Over the following weeks, Nathan began to integrate himself more fully into the children's daily lives. He attended school events, helped with homework, and even found himself enjoying bedtime routines he had once dismissed as trivial. Each small act, each moment of shared laughter, strengthened the bond that had been frayed by years of absence. One evening, as Nathan tucked Lucas into bed, the boy looked up at him with sleepy eyes and whispered, "Daddy, I'm glad you're here. I missed you." Nathan felt tears sting his eyes. He had spent years consumed by work and guilt, thinking that success alone could replace presence. But in that quiet moment, he understood the truth. Nothing mattered more than being there for his children, showing up with love and dedication, and allowing life to be shared fully. Meanwhile, Isabella continued to guide, support, and inspire both Nathan and the children. She modeled patience, kindness, and resilience in ways that left an indelible mark on all of them. Nathan began to see her not just as a caretaker, but as a partner in the sacred work of family. She had shown him that love could be courageous, that stepping forward in the face of fear was the path to transformation, and that even the most broken moments could be healed with attention, compassion, and persistence. One afternoon, Nathan found himself watching Chloe paint in the sunlight streaming through the windows. She held the brush carefully, her small hands steady, her concentration intense. Lucas, nearby, built towers of blocks with precise care, determined to create something beautiful. Nathan's heart swelled with pride and love. In that quiet observation, he realized that this engagement with life, with his children, with the world around him was the true measure of success. Not accolades, not wealth, not recognition, but presence, love, and courage. By the end of the month, Nathan had transformed in ways he had never anticipated. He was no longer a distant observer of life. He was an active participant, fully engaged, fully present, fully alive. And while challenges remained, old habits, fears, and insecurities, he faced them with newfound determination and humility. Guided by the steady example of Isabella and the unconditional love of his children, Nathan knew the journey ahead would not be simple. There would be days of frustration, nights of doubt, moments of uncertainty. But he also knew something profound. He had begun to reclaim his life, rebuild his family, and discover a depth of love and courage he had once believed lost forever. And in that, he found not just hope, but inspiration, a reminder that even in the wake of grief and absence, life could be transformed with heart, presence, and unwavering commitment. Nathan had never expected that a single morning could change everything, but that day, he realized just how fragile and beautiful life could be. He woke to the sound of laughter, this time not tentative, not fleeting, but a chorus that filled the house with warmth. Chloe and Lucas were playing together, their voices blending in harmony, a rhythm Nathan hadn't heard in years. He paused at the bedroom doorway, heart pounding, unsure if he was ready to step into a moment that felt so new, so fragile, and so important. Breakfast that morning was chaos in the most beautiful way. Lucas spilled orange juice across the table. Chloe's toast burned slightly, and Nathan found himself laughing, a sound that felt strange and foreign on his own lips. Isabella moved among them like a conductor of an orchestra, calmly redirecting spills and mishaps into lessons in patience and resilience. Nathan observed her closely, realizing that she had not only guided the children, but had also taught him, silently, how to embrace life's imperfections with grace. As the morning progressed, Nathan noticed something he hadn't anticipated. The children were beginning to confide in him. Chloe, usually reserved and careful with her words, shared a story about her day at school, while Lucas proudly described a drawing he had made. Nathan listened, really listened, without judgment, without distraction, and found himself connecting in ways he hadn't imagined possible. It was in these moments that he realized something profound. Love was not about perfection or grand gestures. It was about presence, attention, and the willingness to be vulnerable. Later that afternoon, Nathan decided to take a bold step. He invited the children to help him with a small project in the garden, a simple birdhouse he had started months ago, but had abandoned out of busyness and fatigue. Chloe and Lucas eagerly agreed, and together, under Isabella's gentle supervision, they began sanding, painting, and assembling the pieces. Nathan's hands, once accustomed only to drafting tables and contracts, learned a new skill that day: patience. He learned how to guide without taking over, how to allow mistakes to become lessons, and how to celebrate effort as much as achievement. As they worked, Chloe paused and looked at him seriously. "Daddy, I'm glad you're here. I miss doing things like this with you." Nathan's throat tightened. Years of absence, of missed opportunities, weighed heavily in that single sentence. Yet, in that moment, he understood that it was never too late to begin again. It was never too late to be present, to be courageous, to be the parent he had promised to be. Isabella watched silently from the sidelines, her presence a steady reassurance rather than an interference. Nathan realized, with quiet awe, that her role in their lives was not to replace him, but to awaken him. She had taught the children to trust, to love, and to embrace joy. But most importantly, she had shown Nathan that he could do the same. Without her, perhaps he would have continued wandering through life in a haze of grief and guilt. With her, he had learned that courage could take many forms: showing up, listening, embracing imperfection, and daring to hope. The sun began to dip toward the horizon, painting the garden in shades of gold and amber. Nathan, Chloe, and Lucas stepped back to admire their work. The birdhouse was imperfect, with paint slightly smudged and edges not quite aligned, yet it radiated life and effort. Nathan felt a swell of pride, not in the final product, but in the shared experience, the laughter, the mistakes, and the joy of creating together. In that moment, he understood that family, like the birdhouse, was not about perfection, but about love, patience, and shared moments of courage. That evening, as Nathan read to the children before bed, he noticed the change not just in them, but in himself. His voice carried confidence and warmth, his touch was gentle, and his eyes reflected engagement rather than distraction. Chloe snuggled close. Lucas rested his head against his shoulder, and Nathan whispered a silent promise. To Amelia, the mother they had lost, he would honor her memory not through wealth or success, but through love, presence, and courage. After the children drifted into sleep, Nathan and Isabella sat in the quiet of the living room, a comfortable silence stretching between them. Nathan felt a surge of gratitude and humility. "I don't know how I ever got this wrong for so long," he admitted. "I thought I was protecting them by working, by securing the future. But I was just hiding from the present. I see that now." Isabella nodded, her eyes kind but firm. "The present is where life happens, Nathan. The past can teach you, the future can inspire you, but the present is where love grows. You're learning, and that is all that matters," Nathan reflected. On the journey so far, he had walked through years of grief, guilt, and absence. Yet now he was stepping into life fully. He understood that love required courage, the courage to show up, the courage to listen, the courage to forgive himself for the past, and the courage to embrace the future. And he realized that the greatest lessons often came from those who quietly guided us toward them, those who showed us strength through patience, kindness, and unwavering commitment. As the moon rose and cast a gentle glow over the house, Nathan felt a sense of peace he had never known. Life was still fragile, still filled with challenges, but he had discovered a truth that would guide him forever. Family was not about perfection, wealth, or control. Family was about love, presence, courage, and the willingness to show up every day, even when it was hard, even when fear lingered. And in that quiet, luminous night, Nathan understood that the journey of rebuilding his family had only just begun, but with patience, guidance, and love, it would lead to a future filled with hope, joy, and resilience that could not be shaken by loss or time. Nathan awoke before dawn that morning. The house unusually quiet, except for the soft hum of the heating system. For the first time in years, he didn't feel the familiar weight of dread pressing on his chest. Instead, there was a sense of anticipation, a quiet tremor of excitement, as if the day itself held a promise he had been waiting for without realizing it. He rubbed his eyes, feeling the ache of sleep, and noticed the faint outline of Chloe and Lucas' bedroom door ajar. A faint glow spilled from within, signaling that his children were already awake, likely eager to start the day. The first thing Nathan heard was laughter, a small, genuine, unrestrained sound that filled him with warmth and nostalgia. It was the sound of life reclaiming its place in their home. He paused, listening intently, savoring the moment, realizing that he had taken so long to simply notice. Isabella was there too, orchestrating the morning with quiet confidence, guiding the children with gentle words and steady hands. Nathan felt a pang of awe. This woman had not only been a caretaker, but had become a beacon of hope for a family that had been wandering in shadows. As he descended the staircase, Nathan's mind raced. Today, he resolved, would be different. He would not merely observe, he would participate fully, without fear, without hesitation. He found the children in the kitchen, giggling over a pancake mishap, Lucas smearing syrup on the table while Chloe tried to rescue what she could of her stack. Nathan couldn't help but laugh, the sound raw and unpracticed, yet it felt liberating. He joined in, wiping syrup from tables, stacking pancakes, and playfully competing with Lucas over who could pour syrup with the most precision. Isabella watched silently, her eyes twinkling with approval. Nathan caught her glance and nodded subtly, a silent acknowledgement of the partnership forming between them. He realized, once more, that she was not his rival, not a replacement, but a guide showing him the courage it took to be fully present. After breakfast, Nathan suggested a walk through the garden, inviting the children to help plant some flowers. Chloe and Lucas eagerly agreed. Racing ahead with excitement, Nathan followed, carrying small pots and tools, feeling the sun on his face and the earth beneath his feet. For the first time in years, he felt connected to the simple rhythms of life, to soil, to growth, to creation. It was a grounding sensation, a reminder that even the smallest acts of love and care could cultivate lasting beauty. As they worked, Chloe asked Nathan a question that caught him off guard. "Daddy, do you think Mommy can see us from heaven?" she whispered, her voice trembling with both hope and sorrow. Nathan knelt beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her face, and held her hands gently. "I like to think she can, sweetheart," he said softly, "and I like to think she's proud of us, proud of the way we love each other and care for one another." Lucas, overhearing, nodded solemnly. his small hands patting the soil around the flowers. "I think she's happy," he said confidently. Nathan felt tears prick his eyes. Here were his children, resilient, hopeful, and trusting, despite the pain of loss. And he realized that their strength mirrored the courage he had been learning to reclaim within himself. The day progressed with small victories and lessons. Nathan taught Lucas to measure soil properly, helped Chloe carefully plant delicate petals, and together, they created a little patch of life that symbolized more than flowers. It symbolized healing, presence, and the possibility of growth after grief. Isabella moved among them, offering guidance only when necessary, allowing Nathan to step fully into his role while subtly reminding him that courage and love were built in moments of attention and patience. Later, Nathan suggested a family project, a scrapbook of memories, combining drawings, photographs, and handwritten notes from Chloe and Lucas. They worked together, laughing over messy glue and torn edges, sharing stories and secrets along the way. Nathan marveled at the richness of their imaginations and the depth of their emotions. In each page, he saw not only their innocence, but also their resilience, their ability to embrace joy even after loss. He realized that in helping them preserve these memories, he was also preserving his own heart, reconnecting to the family he had almost lost forever. As evening approached, Nathan found himself reflecting on the journey so far. He remembered the long years of absence, the nights consumed by work, the mornings missed, and the opportunities squandered. Yet, standing there with Chloe and Lucas, Isabella nearby, he understood that life had given him a second chance, a chance to be present, to love, and to guide. He recognized that courage was not always about heroic feats or grand gestures. Often, it was about showing up, engaging fully, and allowing oneself to be vulnerable. The night brought a quiet intimacy. After tucking the children into bed, Nathan and Isabella shared a moment in the living room, the soft glow of the lamp casting gentle shadows. Nathan admitted his fears, his regrets, and his hopes. Isabella listened, her calm presence reassuring, and reminded him that the journey of rebuilding family was ongoing, that mistakes were inevitable, but the willingness to continue trying was what mattered most. Nathan felt a surge of gratitude. Here was someone who had not only nurtured his children, but had nurtured him, guiding him toward the father he had always wanted to be. As he finally retired to his room, Nathan reflected on the lessons of the day. He had learned that family was not about perfection or control, but about love, courage, and the small, consistent acts of presence that formed the foundation of trust and connection. He understood that grief would always be part of their story, but so would resilience, joy, and the transformative power of love. And in the quiet of the night, as he looked at a photograph of Amelia, Nathan whispered a promise. He would continue to show up, to grow, and to be the father his children deserved. With Isabella guiding the way and the children's trust in his heart, he knew that together they could face any challenge, overcome any fear, and create a life filled with hope, courage, and unshakable love. Nathan woke that morning to a golden light spilling across the bedroom, brighter than any sunrise he could remember. There was a calm in the air, a quiet that felt different, not empty, but alive with possibility. For weeks now, the house had been filled with laughter, learning, and the small victories of connection. Yet today carried a weight of significance he could not yet name. He rose quietly, careful not to disturb Chloe and Lucas, who were still asleep, their faces peaceful and unburdened by the worries that had once consumed his heart. As he walked to the kitchen, he noticed Isabella already preparing breakfast, the children's laughter faintly drifting from upstairs. She turned, giving him a small, knowing smile, as if sensing the thoughts swirling in his mind. Nathan felt a swell of gratitude, but also a quiet nervousness. Today, he realized, was the day he needed to step fully into the life he had been, reclaiming not as an observer, not as a visitor, but as the father he had always promised to be. The moment the children bounded into the kitchen, Nathan's heart lifted. Chloe's hair was tangled, her eyes bright. Lucas tripped over a rug in his excitement, and the chaos felt like home in the most profound way. Nathan knelt to their level, taking their hands in his, feeling the warmth, the energy, the life that pulsed through them. "Good morning, my explorers," he said, smiling. A genuine smile that reached his eyes for the first time in years. Breakfast was a celebration of small victories. Pancakes slightly burnt, syrup dripping, laughter spilling freely across the table. Nathan found himself participating in the mess, guiding without controlling, laughing without reservation. It was in these ordinary moments that he felt extraordinary. Life had returned, not in grand gestures, but in the small, persistent choices to be present, to love, and to embrace imperfection. After breakfast, Nathan suggested a family outing. To the park, a simple idea, yet monumental for him. They packed sandwiches, snacks, and a blanket, and set out, the children's excitement contagious. On the way, Nathan reflected on the journey that had brought them here, the years of grief, the absence, the quiet despair that had once consumed him. And yet, standing now with his children chattering beside him, he realized that transformation was possible when courage, presence, and love were allowed to guide the way. At the park, Chloe and Lucas ran freely, building imaginary castles, racing, and playing with a joy that Nathan had almost forgotten. Isabella followed at a distance, letting Nathan lead, silently supporting without interference. Nathan joined in, running, laughing, and guiding, learning to balance discipline with freedom, structure with imagination. Each interaction was a lesson in patience, empathy, and courage. He realized that love was not only feeling, it was action, presence, and the willingness to risk vulnerability. As the afternoon sun began to dip, Nathan gathered the children to sit on the blanket. He handed each of them a small notebook. "I thought we could start a journal," he said, "a place to write our thoughts, our dreams, and the things we learn from each other. That way, we can always remember the journey we're on together." Chloe and Lucas looked at him with wide eyes, their curiosity ignited, and eagerly began writing, drawing, and sharing. Nathan watched them, a lump forming in his throat, overwhelmed by pride and love. Later, as they walked home, Nathan noticed the subtle changes within himself. He felt lighter, more patient, more attuned to the world around him. He understood now that grief was not a wall to hide behind, but a bridge to growth if approached with courage and presence. He had learned that love required showing up, that trust required time, and that resilience was nurtured not through avoidance, but through engagement. That evening, after tucking the children into bed, Nathan sat with Isabella in the living room. The soft glow of the lamp highlighted her serene expression, and he realized that she had become an integral part of this transformation, not as a replacement, but as a catalyst. "Thank you," he said softly, "for everything, for the children, for me, for showing me what it means to be brave and present." Isabella smiled. "You did the work, Nathan. You chose to show up. You chose to love. That is the courage that truly matters. The rest will follow." Her words resonated deeply. Nathan realized that courage and love were intertwined, and that by embracing both, he had created not just a family, but a home filled with warmth, hope, and connection. In the weeks that followed, Nathan's presence became the foundation upon which their family thrived. He attended school events, guided homework, celebrated victories, and comforted defeats. Chloe and Lucas began to confide in him freely, sharing their dreams and fears, trusting him in ways that once seemed impossible. And Nathan, in turn, learned to trust himself, to forgive past mistakes, to embrace the present, and to move forward with intention. One evening, as the family sat together under the stars, Nathan whispered a promise to Amelia, the mother they had lost. He would honor her memory not through absence, but through action, not through sorrow, but through love, not through wealth or success, but through presence. Chloe snuggled close, Lucas rested his head on his shoulder, and Nathan felt a profound peace settle over him. He had been transformed not by wealth, status, or achievement, but by courage, resilience, and the quiet power of love. Isabella's guidance, the children's trust, and his own willingness to step forward had combined to create a life more meaningful than he had ever imagined. The house, once silent and hollow, now resonated with laughter, joy, and hope, and Nathan knew, with certainty, that no matter the challenges ahead, they would face them together with courage, love, and unwavering presence. As he looked at his children sleeping peacefully that night, Nathan understood a truth that would guide him for the rest of his life. Family was not about perfection, wealth, or control. Family was about showing up, loving fully, and embracing life's moments, small and large, with courage and heart. And in that understanding, Nathan found not just redemption, but inspiration, hope, and the unshakable certainty that life, when lived with love, could transform even the deepest wounds into a story of triumph.